In 2010, my comfortable outlook was shattered as I learned about PFAS chemicals. In March 2010, after learning about the use of aqueous film forming foam, that's a mouthful, AFFF, a firefighting foam used by the United States Air Force since the 70s, my team sampled soil at a former firefighting training site on the former Woodsmith Air Force Base in Oscoda, Michigan. To my surprise, the PFAS and PFOA chemicals we were looking for were still in the soils at high concentrations. We would go on to find PFAS, PFOA, and 19 other compounds in the PFAS family spread across the entire base. In those first years, from 2010 to 2012, we found it in every groundwater well on the base except for one, in every surface water sample we took, and in every fish we sampled. I had never seen anything like it. When I asked one of our state toxicologists for a criteria the Air Force needed to clean up the base to, he looked at the scientific literature and gave me a very preliminary criteria of 100 to 60 parts per trillion of PFOA and PFOS. In my business, those low potential criteria could only mean one thing. These chemicals were extremely dangerous. By the time I got those preliminary criteria in midsummer of 2010, I already knew that the chemicals were virtually indestructible. They were extremely important to industry and were found around the globe. I realized that the chemicals that the Air Force had worked, I realized that the remedies that the Air Force had worked on at Woodsmith Air Force to address the other contaminants of concern would not control these chemicals and were not protective of the people and the environment. Because I knew I would be telling the Air Force to start all over on cleaning up the base after already spending millions, I, for the first time in my career, questioned my toxicologist's findings. Before that, I had just accepted whatever the toxicologist said. This time, I personally had to be convinced these chemicals were that dangerous. I dove into studying the toxicology of these chemicals and the epidemiology of diseases associated with PFAS. I also happened to be studying, for personal reasons, autism. The deeper I got into these issues, the more frightened and angrier I became. I realized that I had been duped into thinking that we were being protected by our laws. We have been contaminating our population for years. Over the last 30 years, the rise in America and around the globe of many neurologic disorders, autoimmune diseases, metabolic disease, infertility, late-term miscarriages, certain cancers, certain birth defects, etc., were real and not some statistical fluke. I said that I became afraid and angry. PFAS are not the only contaminants to be concerned about, but given their indestructible nature, how useful they are to us in everyday life, and their toxicity, they scare me. In 2010, I began to feel that I was at the edge of the abyss looking into hell, and the weight of the world was on my shoulders. My fear and anger turned into conviction and determination. That conviction and determination has led to many actions, including a 2012 report to the director of the MDEQ. People want to know what I think about the state's current efforts on PFAS. Although nothing is perfect, Michigan, along with a few other states, is shining a light on a problem the nation must face, and Michigan's experience cannot be ignored. I want to end my talk with 4 points. Number 1, we need to know exactly what the health impacts chemicals are causing in the nation. The citizens do not yet know the extent of the PFAS problem here in Michigan, and that information will slowly roll out. They do not know the cost that it will take to address the issues here and around the nation. Fear alone cannot drive us and will not sustain the effort. Only conviction and determination based upon knowledge can drive us to work and sacrifice. Looking for someone to blame will become a distraction, number 2. Understanding how we got ourselves in such a mess is important if we are going to fix things and avoid further contamination. However, the current situation is the result of millions of small individual decisions. Number 3, we can get angry with the business community and certain corporations. But it must be remembered that though we will find a number of bad guys in industry, the business community is made up of millions of great people, both owners and workers. The business community is where the solutions will come from. The government, media, and academia have important roles, but business will roll out the solutions. We need to find better ways to work together. Finally, I don't know how much it will cost to address the PFAS crisis and whether we can afford it. But I do know one thing: no nation can afford to poison its children. We must make sure we are doing everything in our power to raise the next generation and with the very best start that we can give them. Thank you again for giving me this chance to express to you and to those listening what has laid on my heart so long.